Welcome to General Conference 101. I'm Jasmine Haynes, and I'm here to talk to you about one of many resources that will be made available to you to explain the purpose of General Conference. So the purpose of General Conference 101 is to provide clarity on what exactly General Conference is, why we have General Conference, and how what happens at General Conference impacts your local church. I'm here today with our very own Episcopal leader, Bishop James E. Swanson Sr. Bishop Swanson, it's good to have you today. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for inviting me to be a part of this.
Well, in having a dialogue about what General Conference is, the first question I have to ask you is, what's the purpose of General Conference, and how often does this gathering take place?
Okay. Well, the main purpose of General Conference, Jasmine, is for the church to really review all of the rules and regulations, which we commonly call the Book of Discipline. But we only review the rules and regulations that people send in petitions or resolutions about. And those are the ones that we look at. And from time to time, we have people who want to change them or enhance them or to do something new with them. And we do that once every 4 years. It just happens that we're on the presidential election cycle. So whenever there is a presidential election coming up, just know that General Conference is
General Conference is on its way.
Right. So that's how we do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we learned from your listening sessions prior to the called session of General Conference last year in 2019, and other GC coverage that has gone on, that bishops have neither voice nor vote during session. And I hear that's very important to remember. During the session of General Conference, bishops have neither voice nor vote. So exactly what do Bishop Swanson, what do bishops do at the regular session of General Conference?
At the regular session, the reason we have no voice nor vote is that we're called on to preside. And as presiding officers, we are called to help the conference do its business. And in a sense, it's sort of symbolic that even though you have one person who is presiding, in essence, the whole council is presiding. And therefore, we do not have voice or vote, because at any given time, the person who happens to be presiding at that particular point may need to turn and ask guidance from the whole council about how to do that. And so we would be having sort of a conflict of interest. So in a sense, the whole council is really presiding, so we don't have voice or vote. Now, people could ask, which I've not seen them do it, well, let me see, not since I've been a bishop, but before, where they might ask the bishops to speak to an issue. So they could ask us to do that, but we do not. We have not been granted by the Constitution the right to vote.
Would an example of that be in the 2016 General Conference, where someone came to the floor and asked the bishops for guidance towards what would later become the Commission on the Way Forward?
Right. They asked us, would we be willing to help the church find a way forward? Okay. And we met separate from the conference and discussed that as a council. And in that meeting, of course, because we were not the conference, we were the Council of Bishops meeting, there was a great discussion about it, great debate about it, and finally coming forth was this offer to appoint the Commission on the Way Forward that came forward, but again, it was because the General Conference extended to us that opportunity.
So Bishop Swanson, I think it's an important fact that people know what General Conference is, and part of that is knowing what General Conference is not.
Okay.
We know that General Conference 2020 will not be like the called session of General Conference in 2019. So how so? Elaborate on that.
Well, let me even try to draw a parallel that many people might understand and know. In your church, whenever you have anything that is labeled a called session, you have to explain exactly what that call is for. You say that say for instance, if the church is getting ready to build a building and you call a church or a church conference or a charge conference, you would have to say, we're calling this session simply to vote on whether or not we're going to build the building. So no other business can come, just that one item. That's what 2019 was. It was a called session of the General Conference for the purpose of voting on a way forward on the issue around human sexuality. So nothing else could be discussed. No matter what we might have wanted to discuss, we could not discuss anything but that. But the General Conference, you can discuss any and all business pertaining to any of the petitions or resolutions around the Book of Discipline or around any concerns like the budget and all of that's open season. If you notice, one of the things too at General Conference 2019, we voted and we discussed and debated as a conference of the whole. But we had two sessions, and I don't think people really realize that. We had, the first one was a legislative session where we met to perfect the document or the petition going forward. And so we discussed it, debated, made amendments to it and everything until we came forward with a completed document. And then we went out of the legislative session into the General Conference session where we actually voted on it. In the 2020, you will have 14 legislative committees, and the legislations, which are thousands of them pieces, will go into the various legislative committees, the 14 legislative committees. And from that, amendments will be added, amendments to the amendments. Now, all that will happen until they perfect that document or until they decide they don't want it and they can vote it down. And it does not go any further than that unless you have enough votes to push a minority report, which means that there are enough people there who don't agree with the decision of the legislative committee, and so it will still get to the floor. And so once those 14 committees, as the 14 committees finish their work, that work will be pushed on to a group that will determine when it's presented to the whole session. Usually, the first week of General Conference is the legislative sessions. And then it's the second week where we actually vote on the actual legislation that is put forward.
So that's where all the decisions really get made, as far as finalized. They happen when we're voting in the second week.
Right.
Again, General Conference, regular session, is usually not focused on one particular issue, which means it's also where delegates and bishops and clergy and lay come together and discuss the mission and ministry of the church, how we move as a denomination in connectionalism, and how we listen for God's voice to help us discern what to go and do next, where God's calling us to go. Talk about that. What happens when that happens? One thing being from 2016, I remember the celebration about Imagine No Malaria and how connectionally we've made impacts there. Is there anything else you want to expand on with that?
Right. I mean, part of it is one of the reasons why, again, let me take it back to the local church. One reason why it's so important that the local church gets a sense of its vision and mission is that all the programmatic pieces that you do, the specific action items that you carry out in your church should flow from that vision and mission. And so once you determine what your vision and your mission is in the world, then everything that you offer ought to flow out of that. And so Imagine No Malaria actually came out of our sense of who we are as the people of God, that we offer health, wholeness, and healing to the world. Then it was natural that we would look at something like malaria that was ravaging particularly sub-Saharan Africa, and that we knew we could do something about. And of course, we've made a tremendous dent. I mean, at one time, you had a person dying, I think something like every 30 minutes or something like that from malaria. And now we have just almost eradicated that piece. We've not only done things with the nets where we can, one net for $10 can cover a family of 4 to 5. And now we even have blankets that are even more protective than, say, the nets are. But we've also helped communities learn how to police their own areas and get rid of standing water and how to respond to it, to know when malaria is attacking them, to get rid of the mosquito and the whole. And also we've even learned how to introduce mosquitoes into the environment that will, in essence, sort of wipe out the mosquito that actually carries the virus. So, I mean, we've done a lot of things like that. And you know, the thing is, and you know, I've said this, and a lot of people around Mississippi know that I kind of quote my mom a lot. You know, my mother said, "It's a poor frog doesn't praise his own pond." And I think part of us as United Methodists is that we don't praise ourselves when we do good. We concentrate too much on the negative. But that came out of General Conference. And it came out of the sense that we could do something around malaria, and we did. And we're still doing it, and we're still changing the whole world around it. So, I mean, just take, in case people don't know, the two conferences that I've served in Holston and now here in Mississippi, we've raised over $2 million between those two conferences.
Wow. Which
means that we've saved over 200,000 lives. People, and so when you look at that, I realize we're not. So that's kind of how it goes. When you can sense who you are, then you can come up with the actual programs that you ought to be pushing out that reflect who you are. I mean, the other part that I did not say too is that General Conference mirrors the annual conference in the sense that in the annual conference, every local church has a representative, or at least every charge has a representative, where you get one lay person and one clergy person. Well, it's the same thing in a sense in General Conference, except we elect the lay delegates from the annual conference to go, and the clergy and their ballots. So if in our case, we have 10 from Mississippi, so you have that balance that goes to General Conference, and you must have, General Conference must have a balance. The same number of lay delegates to General Conference, you will have the same number of clergy. So we have the opportunity for 1,000, but I think we're down to about 866 now. But it's equal lay and clergy.
So in essence, the delegates that make up General Conference are very much so people from local churches.
Oh, yeah.
It's a group of local churches within the annual conference who selected just another smaller group of people representing local churches. But local churches are represented at General Conference.
Yeah, very much so, yeah.
Sounds like we achieve a lot collectively together in mission and ministry and as we administer business. Is there anything else you want to add, Bishop Swanson?
Well, as far as some of the things that we've been able to do, I mean, starting new congregations. I mean, we've had missions in Mongolia. A lot of folks don't even know that, where we've been able to start congregations there. There are other things that we have been able to do around the world. The current Ebola crisis that we had, particularly in Sierra Leone and other parts of the world, we played an important role in that. Many of you have probably heard of Emory University, but a lot of folks don't know that Emory University has a hospital, Emory Hospital, that played a key role in helping with the fight with Ebola in Sierra Leone. And without Emory, just to give you a case in point, I found out, because I'm on that board, that it took about 60 nurses to deal with one Ebola patient because of the fluids that come out of the person and stuff. But we flew one patient here to Atlanta, to Emory Hospital, that we were able to treat, and that person lived because of it. But what happened, we found out so much about Ebola that we were able to pass that on to the people in Sierra Leone and to do a great job around helping to fight Ebola. So we've done those kinds of things. We've had other events like around helping young people understand and hear their call to ministry across not only our conference but around the world. So I realize that there's just a lot of fussing a lot of times that gets the headlines, and it's sort of like in your own community, bad news always travels fast. Good news seems to simmer wherever it happens, but there's just some great things that are going on in the church, and they will continue to go on, not so much because of us, but because of God, Amen, who uses us. Yeah.
Well, Bishop Swanson, thank you so much for joining us today and answering these questions surrounding General Conference. And stay tuned. You can keep up and find out more information on the Facebook page by the conference, which is the Mississippi United Methodist Conference. You could subscribe to newsletters at the bottom of our website, and you can also check the homepage of the website for GC 2020 updates. Next time, Bishop Swanson will be talking with us, giving us an overview of what's going on at General Conference and then proceeding towards legislative committees. See you next time.